Let me say a special good morning to our listeners. Those of you via Classic Radio, whether it's 105.5 or 105.9, good Monday morning. Those of you also via GBN TV, whichever of the channels you're viewing this morning, I want to wish you a good Monday also. What about those via our social media platforms, whatever it's the YouTube channel, the Facebook page, good morning and welcome. Let me say good morning to my co-host, Mr. Sylvan Intyre. As usual, he's with me this morning, as we do each and every Monday, once the Almighty permits, health, strength, and everything else in between. We here. Good morning to Mr. Intyre. How are you doing this morning, sir?
Hi, good morning to you, GT. I am fine. And let me take the opportunity to say good morning to our listeners, our followers, our viewers, and in general, those who contribute towards the program in any way that suits the objective. I just want to say a pleasant good morning to everyone.
All right. It's been a really interesting week. Last week after our show on Monday, lots have happened during that particular week. We had some rain on Wednesday.
We did speak about it on the Monday. We said it was going to come.
Yes. And it poured on
Yeah.
Wednesday morning. I was it Wednesday? Thursday morning, I would say. Thursday morning, it poured, and it seemed like it caused a haywire of traffic congestion. Usually it takes me 5 minutes from home to GBN. I live in River Road, and it took me 45 minutes to get here. You imagine that?
Yes.
I was like, wow.
So that could be understood to an extent, and it is part of the conversation we held in terms of how people prepare themselves for the adverse conditions. And we were saying that the rain will come towards the latter part of September, October, and when it falls, usually it come in those kind of torrents. So are people really prepared? Not just motorists, but how those who are responsible for taking care of the environment, and, the roadworks and all of that, whether or not they too are prepared. Because I heard a caller speak about the water accumulating in some of the drains in the south of the island, that's Montrouge area. And that area was down and has been spoken of for some attention. As you may realize that area, the aspect of it is under sea level.
Yes.
So in terms of, there's not a quick runoff into the sea when water goes into that area. And there was conversation one time about having a pump in those areas. And I've known places like Guyana and Suriname where they have these problems. They have installed pumps. So it takes the water from one point, it throws it into another, so you avoid the flooding issue. So I know that was a discussion many years ago for that area, because if we do have climate change and the threat of that kind of a flood and the amount of commercial activities and business and the tourist belt there is as well, I think that's an area that we need to go under some consideration.
And I know it's not a directional conversation this morning, but I would like to ask you this. We have noticed these floodings and these things over the years in specific areas. Why haven't the authority put some serious attention into, some way of mitigating or preventing it to the magnitude that we see it happening? And it continues to happen year after year. And we see no serious attempt has been made to remedy it to a point. It may not be a total fix.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
But something about remedying that position. When that happens, we will not have the problem. Because we know what happens when these things takes place.
Of course.
The slowdown of commercial activity, individuals are hindered from the everyday movement or their movement on that particular time that happens. Well, we're going to see the authority put some serious attention into that.
And in addition to what you said in terms of the losses, the businesses that are inconvenienced and their losses to the products.
Yes.
And the commodities that they offer for sale, they have some losses in those areas. So it's something, and I don't know to the extent to which authorities are really addressing the issues. And sometimes to us it seems very slow. And maybe there could be a process internally where they have to put instruments in place and the process of getting that.
But does it take years?
Maybe it does take years before you can see some physical activities on ground. But you're absolutely right. But programs like the one which we are hosting is where we need to continue the conversation. Because when you raise the issues, you continue the conversation, it gets to some point where people either get annoyed with you and address it, mad at you, or you genuinely decide, well, you know what, we had to address it, or they may come forward and give reasons why we could not have addressed it in that particular time. I think that's the kind of a move we would wish to see. But people like ourselves, really conscious citizens who would want to raise the issues, I think we should continue the conversation. It's like we spoke about the signs around the island.
Yes.
And it seemed as though there was no move in that direction for a while after we had the conversation. But now we are seeing movements in that direction.
I would agree with that also. We've seen signs,
definitely
repainting and stuff like that, which is important.
Which is important.
Yes.
And we don't know if what we're saying is what is having that impact. But if we're seeing action after we speak, we can safely say that aspect of it is contributing to that. So we have to keep the conversation on the issues, and this is why we chose one aspect to discuss this morning, which is the aspect of food security.
Yes.
How we can look at the structures, the mechanism, if there is some kind of a crisis. Do we have access to sustainable food for a period of time for all people? And that's a conversation that we wanted to just touch on. And it may not be in depth, but when we speak on it, it keeps people thinking, and it gets the authority to move in a particular direction, which is really positive for all of us.
You know, I mean, I say let's jump into the conversation one time, because food security is very important.
Yeah.
For a small island as Grenada.
Yes.
And just imagine if an example is as of Hurricane Ivan time. Just think of an example of that. Suppose we have a reoccurrence of a storm condition of that nature reoccurring.
Yes.
Are we have that? Is there this food security issue in Grenada? Is it safe enough? Is there enough storage for us just in case we run into that problem?
Yeah.
Just in case an issue like Ivan occurs again.
You're right.
No, we're not wishing for it to happen.
No, but the reality.
But think about food security in Grenada. It's very important.
Yeah.
It's very, very, very important.
And that's a massive topic, really. And it really requires a full program to go into the depths. But as I said before, we really scratch the surface of the issues to initiate the conversation that it could be looked into more seriously. And when you look at what food really is, and food speaks of anything that is nutritious, whether it is to drink or to eat for animals and people and plants for growth and development, life as a whole. So when we look at what that is, anything that is nutritious and for humans, for plants, for animals, that is something says that this is life in itself. The basic livelihood of an individual. Food is dependent. You understand? Yes. And when we look at the aspect of security, food security, it really speaks of the access to reliable source of food for everyone. All people and at all times. And so that whole aspect of it cannot be got into ad hocly. It has to be a system of what is there that guarantees access to reliable food source, nutritious food to that sense to all people. And in the event that we have a crisis, what is there that give people the access? But before we have the crisis, we have to look at the infrastructure. We have to look at both physical, and we have to look at the intangibles in terms of the instruments that would guide what food security is expected to be like. And we recall very clearly that when Hurricane Ivan struck us in 2004, September 7, we were to a large extent as a nation, and maybe to wider Caribbean, because that was an awakening point for the Caribbean, because we had not seen that for a long time. And so it raised the issue and saw the anxiety of people, and even government became nervous, because when you have situations where people are uneasy, people may say, I may not necessarily have the best place to sleep, or otherwise I may not have a vehicle, but please give me some food.
Something to eat.
Give me something to eat. I need something to eat, because that would, guarantee strength and energy for development. And so in 2004, when people assembled in all areas across country to have access to food, that was a challenge. Distribution points were not really established. Although there was some structure that we had in place, they were technically on paper and they were never tested. And so when Hurricane Ivan came, it brought out the true reality as whether or not people can go to these points, whether we can have things stored at these points, and even if we don't have them stored, but we have the facilities identified that people know that that's where they can find food in crisis condition. The food security aspect goes to a point of even our land use.
Yep.
We know that Grenada has a land use policy and how people should build, where they should build, and where should be designated as commercial areas, housing areas, and farmlands.
Yeah.
And to a large extent, I don't know how much of that is adhered to, and that has its impact on food security.
With the seriousness of food security right now, as we speak about it, where should the focus should lie? Should it be on Grenada, focusing a whole lot more on the agricultural aspect of it in terms of developing our food stock in terms of agriculture, or we should be more dependent on the importation of food? Where do you think the focus should really be at now?
Right. So I will speak from the point of a disaster risk management specialist, from that aspect of it and how we can mitigate that. The economists and the agriculturalists and so forth, they would speak on that aspect of it and, as to whether we should import food or whether we should grow food. But the layman, any sensible person would tell you that if you are able to eat what you grow and grow what you eat, you are making good sense.
Yes.
And so there should never be an over-dependence on imported stuff, especially when you are convinced that you have the land space and you have what it takes to be able to do that. But personally, I think that our effort should be on ensuring that we could produce as much things as possible to sustain ourselves. It has a lot of economic impact positively, meaning that if you ask the agriculture department in terms of how much food that we import over a period of time,
surpasses what we
are able to produce. And then if you speak to the farmers and the vendors as to what is produced and the incentive for producing, they may also say to you, it makes better sense to import some stuff because of the cost of production and because of the sustainability and the access to market for what is being produced and how you can get it sold. So the discussion has to be, I think we need wider consultation across country. I have seen a very positive move by the new administration in terms of speaking about the focus on agriculture. I attended one of the consultations, I think was it last week or the week before, which was very useful. Farmers made their contributions in terms of where they think agriculture should go. And at that meeting, the Minister of Agriculture was there and he stayed throughout the meeting. The Permanent Secretary was there, he stayed throughout the meeting. I saw technical people from Ministry of Agriculture and field officers. They were all there with the farmer. That's a really good and encouraging sign. But that action must come out. That meeting then and that discussion must come out in the practical aspect of it. But I think coming out of that, the focus still was on we can produce more. And I think out of the consultation, they will give a national response in terms of how the agriculture sector is doing, how fishing is doing generally, and how other aspects is being impacted. And for the time that they may have been around and the focus in agriculture, I think what I heard in the consultation, they are going to be giving the nation an idea as to where we are and what it is. But we do think a lot more should be put into producing more that Grenada is capable of doing. Now that we have the impact of climate variability, I don't want to say climate change to a large extent because it varies at times where you would get the rain and sometimes you get excessive heat, like you mentioned, the amount of rainfall we had in a couple of days, whether that was a positive or negative to a large extent. Now, the water came down really heavy, and when you have that level of condensation and so forth coming down up, so forth, you would have also, it compresses the heat that comes because a lot of evaporation will not be taking place so quickly.
Yes.
So the heat stays down as well. But when that heat is suppressed and it increases, then the evaporation will take place a lot more.
Yep.
Now, when you have water on heated area, you have the steaming effect, and the steaming effect also turns out to be an evaporation. So if you don't have sustained water over a particular period, the little that you get sometimes has very
a little or no, in fact,
that's
you don't get that balance ratio.
Yes.
Yep.
And so some of the plants that are the leafy vegetables and so on that are exposed, you'd find that if the water comes on it and the heat comes on, it fries it up, it burns it up technically. And then if you have too much water that gets into the soil at any particular time of particular products, it also creates a burning effect and so forth on plants. So we had that challenge, and one of the direction in terms of that security issue is to how we can sustain farmers into having year-round farming and having the irrigation process, upgraded, so that you can have more things produced more continuously and at greater volumes, so that we can have access to it. But the conversation we would want to is how, if we have, or the likelihood of a crisis, how we can really mitigate against that.
Recommendations for recommended. What do you consider as recommendations to farmers? I mean, you see,
I would have some
recommendations, for farmers, even, regular individuals who may not be, full-time farmers themselves.
Yeah.
You understand? But recommendations, what we could do to improve, to mitigate in terms of food security.
And Gigi, that's why I like us, because we speak of the issue, and then we come to recommendations and corrections as to what should be done. So from my layman's point of view, I know the economists and the agriculturists and agronomists and so forth, they may have their bigger contribution. But my simple recommendation is that if we have more backyard farming, that's a given. It doesn't take a lot.
You don't need that huge land space, and there's always things you can modify.
Yes, a lot of them.
Modify around your surroundings.
Some of the containers that we threw around, the drums and so forth, the containers, the barrels, and all of that, you can cut them and you can put them on stands. You can use the bamboo and do little beds and banks to do your little agricultural products. Small buckets, people can use them to do their seasoning and so forth. And I have a cousin,
especially the short crops.
Yeah, man, I have a cousin somewhere in Tempe. Cousin Shirley, I think she is. And when I looked around the house with all the little things that she trust me, it is really, really wonderful to see. I mean, an aged person really, if we have more people who can involve in that aspect of having backyard gardens, we would be more sustained, and food security could be a bit more guaranteed in that sense. So we think that a lot of the energies and effort, we want to be able to drive people in that direction. That's one of the recommendations. The other aspect of it is that there has to be a pooling and a designating of particular areas and particular types of vegetable and food that would be best produced in particular areas across country, and at what time of year that these things will be produced. I think that there might be an initiative towards doing that.
Yes.
And I think on the land development and zoning policies, they may have some aspect on that, but it is not, in my opinion, accessible to a lot of people, so that you have, when the so-called rainy season comes in, a lot of people produce, maybe like now, a little before now, watermelons and pumpkins.
And then we see the market get saturated.
And then you realize that a couple months down the road, these things just disappear. Like now, we're having a crisis with lettuce, I think.
And tomatoes.
And so on. And that has to do a lot. I think there was some disease that they said they found out that affected the seeds of lettuce that, the people produce the seedlings from and so forth. But the greater aspect of it is because of the excessive heat that we were experiencing or have been experiencing over the continuous days. But we're also saying that our water supply That's one condition, right? So whether or not we are able to do irrigation. But if we are able to do irrigation, then what is our access to those irrigation points, those collection points? Are we saying that the Solar Authority, the National Water and Sewerage Authority, is guiding us sufficiently into the areas where we can make access to those points? So you see how far we're going?
Yeah.
Road access to those irrigation points, road access to getting catchment areas and having it, channel into particular areas where the farmers themselves could have access to it so they can irrigate their system. So that in itself is having a longer term effect on how much people can produce and the time they can produce it. So my recommendation would be definitely to have a survey that the average person would have access to as to areas in Grenada where you can farm, what time of the year the best time to farm, and farmers will be advised as to what you can do and be given the support to do that.
Okay.
And that's one of the recommendation. The other thing is knowledge.
Yeah.
I think there need to be more access to.
But you may have to define knowledge a whole lot, eh?
Yes, so it's not education and it's not a degree in agriculture. Otherwise,
the knowledge. Sometimes the basic part of knowledge. That's what is needed also.
Yes,
in terms of the do's and don'ts.
More forum for where. Not just farmers, because some people may not want to call themselves farmer or farmer per se, but somebody who just a food producer, you grow some food and so forth just for self-sustenance and so. But there could be good advice on it. I mean, most people may not have gone through the academics in understanding certain things, and they may just do it because of trial and error. No, even the trial and error people, we should be able to harness their knowledge and experience to complement that with the people who are more academically and technologically inclined.
Yes.
So when we have this knowledge bowl or this knowledge pool of the experience and the modern technological people who are so inclined, we can at least chart a different direction that could lead to increased production, and that could lead to a reduction in terms of our input bill and how we can be more self-sustained. The type of food that we can grow, for instance, there are places. How much potatoes do we really grow? The sweet potatoes. Yeah. And do you know that we produce a lot of people buy sweet potato fries?
Yes.
I do that when I go out because I prefer the sweet potato fries than the other. But even the other potato can be grown here as well. But we don't produce it quite a bit because
the lack of knowledge.
That's correct.
The lack of knowledge.
So I think that that knowledge bowl will increase, and my recommendation simply would be to have that forum or continuous knowledge access areas where people can get it, and it has to be generated and driven at community level, not so much at the colleges and all these places, because people who've had less exposure to particular type of education, they would feel intimidated, locked into their shells to go and sit among people in particular places.
You always feel that, but that's not your place. For some reason or the other, that's not your place. Because I have noticed you speak of something a while ago in terms of the potatoes. I have somebody who I know someone who does farming as a hobby. Yes. You understand? They're not a big time farmer or anything, and they're yielding a lot of success in lots of things that we talk about, even the regular Irish potato. I see them getting buckets full of that.
Yes.
And in just their backyard.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
How they're doing it, I don't know.
Yeah. Onions and garlic, all of that too, you know that.
And they're just doing it as a hobby.
Yes.
They're not full time, it's not for sale, it's just for their own personal use. And you can see they're yielding results.
Yes.
And sometimes they have limited education about farming or anything.
Yes.
They probably do a lot of reading and studies and read up about these things.
Yes.
But it's not something that they do, and say, well, they like other people who are really farmers spend hours in their land and so forth. It's only when they get time on a weekend.
That's true.
They spend time. Yes. But it's yielding results.
Yes, of course.
You understand? It's yielding results.
So the whole aspect of the type of food that we can grow, especially with tubers and these kind of stuff, like you have yams, potatoes, we mentioned that. There's Tanya and these other things, and cassava. these have a lot of resilience. So, for instance, if you have hurricanes and strong winds and so on, this will not affect those plants tremendously because they're underground. The other thing about them is that if you harvest them properly, they can last quite a while without any treatment.
And that way that comes in terms of the food security once again.
Yes.
Imagine if everyone in Grenada decide they're having that small plot of land or that little backyard gardening, and we do experience some kind of disaster occurring. We could be able to feed ourselves for a couple of days.
For a long time. Well,
I'm just putting it in
yes.
You don't
need a month of sustainability.
Exactly. We could be able to feed ourselves.
Emergency period lasts between 3 and 7 days technically.
Yes.
And after that it goes into cellular recovery. By that time people should start. And if you harvest like potatoes and you don't wash them, they last quite a while.
Okay.
You just leave them with the dirt on them. Similar with that of tanya and yams and so on. And the old people tell you that if you harvest yams with the dirt or you put it through ash, they will last for quite some time. From one season, they could last into the next season.
So and you have that knowledge. I'm learning that. No, I never knew that.
Yes.
I'm no farmer.
And that's the information that the average householder who's not really a big farmer would understand, that you don't even have to refrigerate those stuff. If you harvest them at best times. As a matter of fact, there's also the moon state in which you do harvesting best and planting just as well.
Because sometimes you see folks have them stockpiled for a long period of time, and you wonder why it's remaining in their good state for that long.
Yes, and the harvesting has a lot to do with it and storage. So if you put it in an area that is for the older people stored some of the agricultural produce in places called sheds.
Yeah.
And we call them the jupas and these stuff. They build little racks and little stands with bamboo and regular wood, and they would put them on it. They would roll the yams and these other things in ash or the regular dirt, and they would stack them on these stands, and they would just remain. For a long time. Now that aspect is something that people will need to understand, and you can replenish them even if you're in your regular home. So you don't want to take them and just put them away in a refrigerator. That would probably dry them up and impact on.
No, the natural elements. That's
natural elements would help it to last quite a bit. Right. Now dasheen is another one that does not have that kind of a life. Dasheen would ripe.
Yeah.
So if you have to keep dasheen for a longer period of time, you need to peel them and then you can refrigerate them, freeze them, and freeze that fresh as possible. When you take them out and defrost it comes out and feels just as fresh as it should be. So there's a lot.
All right. So we got to take a break. We've been talking for a long time now. This conversation could go on for years, So let's take a break. When we come back, we've seen lots of folks been trying to calling. Also, we haven't been taking the calls yet, but we probably do that in the next segment. It's 29 minutes after the hour, folks. We're coming right back. Stay with us. It's To The Point for today, Monday, here on Classic Radio and GBN TV. Stay with us. We're coming right back.
Introducing the NIS Dream Loan, where possibilities are boundless and your aspirations are our priority. No matter where life takes you, NIS Dream Loans are here to make your dreams a reality. From purchasing your first plot of land or dream property to renovating spaces, building your home, and seamlessly switching mortgages, we cater to every step of your journey. And here's what sets us apart. We offer easy financing options with competitive interest rates, quick approval processes, and flexible repayment terms. So why wait? Apply now and let our dedicated NIS team guide you through this exciting journey. Visit nisgrenada.org/dream loan or call 440-3309 to book an appointment. Terms and conditions apply. Your dream awaits.
Hello, ECS.
Yo, OECS, this is your ocean. If I am to protect your future, we have to work together. It's the time to work together. If I am to help protect your future. Once I used to be so pure and clean, and those hills were so fresh and green. But now you see me as your dumping ground. Current situations has me choking on your pollution. Think hard about it. You will agree that really there is no you without me. Make the zero waste pledge, be responsible. Reduce your waste, recycle where possible. Yeah, it's down to you, so make the Recycle OECS. Green actions, blue oceans. Oh, blue oceans and our betterment.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back, viewers, to The Point for today, Monday, the 25th of September, 2023. Welcome back, Sylvan. So once again, interesting is the conversation we were having for the last, 30 minutes or so. Callers, you're welcome if you want to chime in this segment. Also, feel free to do so. Yes. Keep it on topic, please. Off air, we were having a discussion, and I thought we could probably, talk about it some more. I was saying there's a lot of individuals who prefer the importation of certain products. You understand?
And why?
And what? Why?
Why? So that raises a question of
we want the carrots we imported, we see them selling it. So as I was saying, maybe it's the more of the monetary benefit them seeing from it. Or
attitude towards the thing.
The local. But then you did mention something now. Suppose there's a crisis and there's no longer the option of being able to import these products.
Right.
What are we left with?
So that's the question. That's the $1 million question we want to ask where mitigating that risk is concerned. Mm-hmm. So the vessels, we know what happened when we have some kind of a crisis. Vessels can't dock, it can't go on. Purchase and all that, so where do we have access? Yeah. So that longer term conversation has to be had as to, do we really need to rely on that importation, or should we generate more knowledge and information and access to cultivating that locally? And I think a lot of people are deterred by quite a number of factors. Why they think it is
folks
easier
folks want to thief my stuff, and and this, and I don't know if those.
And they want to cut out your hand because you're running into your land, and this kind of a stuff.
let's take a caller. Caller, good morning, welcome. I guess we lost that caller there. And there's so much thing that deters people, as you said, a lot. The pretty larceny. You mentioned the cost of production. Whoa, do I have to pay this person to help me? Help me. Work on this plot.
And access to labor.
And the labor and stuff like that, We're
going to speak about that too when we access this.
Let's take another caller. Caller, you're welcome. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Telesford. Greetings.
Greetings to you, sir.
Mr. McIntyre, how are you, Mr. McIntyre?
Mr. Rudo, are you my mind when I knew this one? I said I was going to.
Why should that happen, boy?
Yes, I wanted to ask you to call him. Hearing you, Mr. Rudo.
No, you see, I don't just pong for pong's sake. I talk on serious matters. But I must indeed tell you that I was enthused this morning on the topic. All the things that you spoke about, the wise thinking, and this country has to seriously begin. The government has shown that they seem to have some interest in. I wanted to say this. Food security can be guaranteed. A while ago somebody spoke about it. With the ships and the planes coming in after, guaranteeing the orders from abroad to feed us. And we have to guarantee this accessibility, of course, cost-wise and otherwise for food for our people. But there is a step beyond, which you elaborated on this morning, but you did not give the full concept, and here is the full concept. Food sovereignty. This is the other step, but you elaborated it well. But the concept behind it is food sovereignty, where indigenous production takes first stage over the import. No, that doesn't mean that we wouldn't continue to import ramen and macaroni, No, we will continue. Who wanted all the people not to use these things and use our substitute? But we know all that there is around agriculture and what the cost, and who want to jump up today, for instance, upon a planting in Grenada at $3. Just imagine that. You can't get carrots and that's all. We have to guarantee food sovereignty, which is the guaranteed provision of locally produced food, conserved where possible through refrigeration and otherwise, so that we can make sure that even we struck, and God forbid, with some sort of disaster, we do not have to wait on the boats and the planes. Food sovereignty. security can be guaranteed with the boats and so coming, but we have to go beyond that. Thank you very much. Continuing on, and occasionally chip in, and not just because I want to talk, but I want to make sure that when I say something that I contribute positively to the debate. Do have a nice day, will you?
Thank you, sir. Have a good morning, yes, sir. And he said it makes some sense there in terms of the sovereignty.
That's and he speak about indigenous produce,
yes,
which is really critical, because there are some things that we can produce here that maybe other people, the land quality and so may not be quite suitable, and we don't utilize it. Yeah, there's another caller.
Let's take another caller. Caller, good morning, welcome.
Good morning, gentlemen, and how are you all today, Mr. McIntyre and GT? Yes, I'm going to make a contribution, but I think we cannot deal with change, because there's everything, every time in this life, or maybe daily, monthly, yearly, change is coming. And we are the people who want to deal with change, because I throw out something about the two-ship system in Grenada, and everybody dumped that. But you all talk about the drain, the food, and something else. But what I want to talk about, the drainage system in Grenada, in Montrouge, is a big problem, and I can tell you what my researcher. In the 70s and 60s, that drain was maintained by the government. In those days, we didn't have so much restaurant and whatever and so on. The lower part of the drain in Montrouge is sold to an investor, right? And that is the lower part. Then we have the outlet to the sea is very much damaged, and no one is taking care of that. One of the reasons why, I think, because the water in that drain at certain time is so contaminated that they don't want to let it out into the Grand Beach. Because once that go out there, is pollution. You hear they talking, the changing of the water, the color, but something must be done. And the reason, like you talk about the drain, because I live in South America, and what you talk about the things in Suriname with the blocking of the water, they call them sluice. So most of the drain, the water system there, they are not only our system, all our drainage end in the sea. But their drain system from the inland end in the river, because their main river is the Suriname River. And all the drainage, they have sluice, and they depend on, besides the river, canals. So there's boats working in these canals, so they have to keep the water up to a level and then they let it out. Everything is managed, but here in Grenada, nothing managed. Right, then the food now, food part of it is, since in the 60s and all these years, we let down the people, all Grenadians doing backyard farming, but we don't have a place to bring our produce in bulk ways. For instance, in the 60s and the 70s, the amount of limes we had, no, just lately I had 7 lime trees, now I walk it down to 1, because I cannot compete with the farmers that looking at for a daily bread. I just doing that. So, but in the 60s, 70s, because I just put a label on your limes bag, drop it in the lime factory, the coconut factory, you drop it in Tempe, you put a label, you pick up your stuff. You had the man making milk and doing the cheese and so forth in Gulf Coast. There are a lot of other factories, so you could have dropped it there. So now, like me, I have limes, I have soursop, I have what you call pumpkins, I have golden apple, and I have all these sugar apples, all these things, and I'm not complaining with the farmers, so they just stay in there and spoil. But I don't have a depot where I can just drop it. So this is where we lock in. You can say the whole of Grenada farmers, we are the big farmers, and we have a lot of backyard farmers, checking from the people alone that come from England and buy plates of land, build houses, and the amount of fruits around the place. We don't have depot dropping off these things. That is the problem. We need to upgrade on that. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Thank you so much.
Yes.
You know, he made a point, but if we reference about our direction of our conversation, we were talking about folks who are, who will plant for their own personal consumption.
Yes.
You understand? That was our main focus this morning. I understand folks will do stuff because for the sake of wanting to sell.
Yes.
And that's where the type of products you want to plant should be for your own personal consumption.
Yes.
Which will save you cost.
Yes.
in the long run.
And you have access to it.
And you have access to it. You understand? Let's take one more caller, because we do have a lot to talk about this morning. Let's take one more caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning to you, sir.
The phone is giving trouble. Hello?
Go right ahead, please.
Yeah. I want to ask, why aren't we making more use of our cassava? That's all I want to ask.
All right, caller, thank you. The caller is asking, why aren't we making more use of our cassava?
I don't know if we even have sufficient cassava in Grenada, because I know, for instance, there's one entity, a bakery somewhere on the eastern side of the island, and they do cassava bread. And the people cannot supply the amount of cassava to make the bread. So, yes, the caller's point is valid in terms of making better use. But are we producing the amount of cassava that the demand require?
Yes, okay.
And this is again where the pool of knowledge of what exists and how it could best be utilized is critical, to the point I made earlier on.
Yeah.
We need to be able to have the information and the access to the information as to how people can know what can be produced where, when, and how it could be produced, and how people can have access to utilize it.
Yeah, folks always say we can do this and we can do this, you know, but then it comes down to the long-term sustainability of it too. Huh?
You know what? As you mentioned that, I was speaking about the cassava bread and the access to it. That bakery that was doing the cassava bread, when they could not get a supply of cassava, you know what they turned to? Breadfruit. So it created some level of innovation. So they were created the breadfruit bread to replace the cassava bread, so that now it says to people, well, maybe we can also do that. Yeah. So we have cassava, we have breadfruit.
Remember, breadfruit is also seasonal. Huh?
Breadfruit is out of season. So, but it is seasonal. But when it is in season, it goes to waste.
So true.
We make mango bread as well, because we have a lot of mangoes. We make banana bread.
Let's take another caller. Caller, good morning and welcome.
Hi, good morning to you, gentlemen. Very, very interested and important conversation. Now, the previous caller, and I think Mr. McIntyre alluded to that. You see, we have let me put it that way. We tend to confuse certain things, that we use words loosely. We call a gardener a farmer. And in as much as backyard gardening is very important, and there is not another more ardent backyard gardener than I am, but I'm not a farmer. I don't have a farm. And once we continue to think that the backyard gardeners are farmers, and we don't see the difference between a subsistence farmer and a real serious farmer, we will not be able to move forward, because everybody feels, as the previous caller said, grow something in my backyard, sell it to a factory or some sort of depot. We have to streamline those things. We cannot even address food security if we're thinking of gardening. We must have serious farms. We must have proper chill houses and warehouses to keep things over a long period of time. Then we can address food security. But we have to not confuse the gardeners like me with farmers. And we have to have special concessions for farmers and things that we won't give to the backyard gardener. We have to make sure that the farmers can feed the nation. So that is just a little problem we seem to have, and we need to define those things more clearly and address them, differently. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Great point. Point.
Very, very, very good points from this caller. I think, that's really food in itself, literally.
Exactly. You know something? That's where you make the distinguish between the two. A farmer and a gardener.
And a gardener. Yeah. You articulated very well.
Let's take another caller. We seem to be getting the callers dominating this segment. Anyway, good morning to you, caller. Welcome.
Good morning, GT, and good morning to Mr. McIntyre. How are you, sir?
We fine.
We're doing okay.
Okay. All right. Another problem we have in Grenada is we have to start planting things in how do you call it? Because right now tomatoes, when the season comes, we have no tomatoes, and hotels use a lot of tomatoes. So we have to find a way what do you call this thing? You plant the thing in a shed, so you can always have tomatoes, especially for the hotels, because the hotels use a lot of tomatoes, and when you don't have tomatoes, you can make a proper dish for the people in the hotel, for the guests. So I work in hotels for a long time, and I know directly if you don't have tomatoes, is to make decoration and to make salads, and so it's a big problem. So they have to start doing greenhouses. We have to go greenhouses. Don't go greenhouses for marijuana. Let's go greenhouses for food, like tomatoes and lettuce and some of the other things. We need to start doing that to just for the hotels to get enough instead of they have to order for themselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller. Thank you, caller.
Now, this caller made a very interesting point as well, but it goes back to what we were saying. Is there an inventory? Are we making a conversation against statistics? Have we done an analysis of the deficit in terms of where we are? If what percentage of the market or the products or the produce that we are able to provide? For instance, he's speaking about tomatoes. What is the shortfall? Are we able to do 60 tons or X amount of kilos, as the case may be? And is there a deficit of another 30 or 40? So if that is the case, then we can strategically position and put things in place to say every year this is our shortfall or import versus our output products here. This is where we are. So it's still going back to the point of, do we have a pool or do we have a scientific on ground as well as scientific analysis of where the gaps exist? And unless, as one of our callers said, unless we are able to do that and have the distinguishing factors as who's farmers, who's garden and all of that, and we understand what we are able to produce and what we should import to fill that gap. And I think if we do it incrementally, meaning that we planned this year and said, okay, last year we had a shortfall around this time of X%.
Yes.
What do we need to do to put an added X% with that? And when we do the analysis of the years it go by, realize now we are able to come up and we know falling short of 5%. What do we need to do to get that other 5%? So now we are 100% compliant in terms of what the requirement is.
And each year we could even produce.
And then we could go beyond that. But we don't want to go to the point where we have a glut and excess. But if we do have glut and excess, what can we do as byproducts of what we produce?
Right.
Do we get these things? If we have an excess of plantains, because I grow plantains and stuff, but when the large one, they crack, they bust and so on, what do I do with them? I cannot sell them, I can't consume them. So do I have pigs or other animals that can consume them? Do I use the animal waste and combine it and make it compost and make a manure that I can get back to the farm? So are these alternatives considered? So when we have gluts, when people go to the market or they go to a depot and they do the stuff, for instance, we understand the marketing board, when they buy stuff and the resale is not so heavy, what do you do with the excess? Do you dump it, or do you bring it back to the farm, or do you reproduce it as a byproduct of those stuff? So it could go back into animal feed, or it could go back to making compost or manure for the soil or the land.
All right.
And these are some of the conversations that we really need to have, that we can have, or food sovereignty on our food security guaranteed, or we can increase or decrease the level of dependence on the imports or the consumption.
All right, let's take another caller. Caller, good morning. You're welcome. Sorry for having you on hold that long. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. I wanted to make a comment about we need to appreciate local produce and the local economy. And the COVID was a typical example when we were under lockdown. Boats and the airplanes were not able to come in. And during that time, we appreciated the local farmers. We appreciated the local tourism. Hotels were having local days. The car rentals were giving local rates. And we appreciated our local economy. And once everything opened, we got back into not appreciating the local tourists, not appreciating the hotel industry was no longer welcoming to locals with local rates and local days off. They were no longer giving local rates to the car renters. They were no longer appreciating the farmers. So we need to stop and think and learn a lesson from COVID, that we cannot always look out for the foreign investment and the foreign economy. Appreciate what we have and don't wait until we are in a crisis to appreciate our local farmers, the local tourism, appreciate what we have. Don't wait for another COVID-19. Let us learn from what happened during the COVID. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. And that's what we're talking about, food security.
Yeah.
That's food
security.
And the caller is right. We have to appreciate our own. But there's still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah. Before we accept the other caller, I just wanted to elaborate a little bit more on that. The COVID experience. So one of our shortfalls in Grenada, I don't know if it's Caribbean, we don't document and we don't write things sufficiently. And unless we document our experience and use lessons learned and implement them, we will always be going around in cycles, and we will produce more Nicole Dow in terms of writing the history.
Yes.
Because we do not document the things that we do and take them so that we can learn from them and implement them and so forth. We need to get more into that realm of documenting our processes, our experiences, and then going back to them and implementing the things that will make a change.
Why do you think Grenada is like that in terms of the lack of documentation at the level that it is?
Grenada, to a large extent, we're nice, we're good, we're quiet, we're tranquil in a lot of ways. And the whole relaxed environment, you go to Carriacou, you go to Petimat, you go to a lot of places in Grenada, and the lifestyle, you may hear people say Grenada is very relaxed, it's a very relaxing place. And maybe that, to an extent, is a disadvantage to us because we take it for granted. And it's a good thing, but our level of comfort is sometimes too comfortable for the production levels that we should be creating. And so we always think, for instance, you live close to the beach, and you just tell yourself, I can go to the beach anytime, and you never go.
So true.
We have the thing around us to say, okay, it's there, so I don't need to bother about it too much, and realize later on it's an issue. Right. So I think our atmosphere contribute to us.
Let's entertain another caller. Caller, you're welcome. Good morning.
Good morning, bro. How you doing?
Not too bad. Go right ahead, please.
Good morning to my partner. The last caller was so correct. And just imagine, right? St. Vincent had a volcano eruption. And they farming seem to be back on track. They're exporting stuff. And they're doing well. On the other hand, Grenada closed on marketing board. And farmers right now are praying for rain, praying for everything. Farmers now are stressed out right now, really, really stressed out. Really, really, really stressed out. I can tell you that. I do the farmers partly every day. And they're talking like, who want to give up? Who want to find something else to do? So here we're talking about farmers to plant, but farmers are thinking about giving up because when they plant, they'll be calling each and every supermarket in Grenada, calling all about the place to see who wants. And most of the supermarkets down here, they put their stuff because they realize, well, they can't get stuff for how they want it. So they put their stuff, because when marketing mode was there, they just called marketing mode. But there's no marketing mode right now, so basically farmers have their own marketing. Just imagine, you're in the hot sun now. You're going to be calling all over the place trying to get something on your farm itself. Or if vendors come to your farm, they give them a price they want. So you can negotiate. So basically you are what I call on the bottom end of the stick. So you put in so much energy and so much money into that crop, and vendors selling what they're giving you or what the market say, there's a price for it. So you can't really talk. So we need to change that system, because in St. Vincent, I don't think farmers are going through all that stress. I mean, they might go through some stress, but I think the system of it is different. Farmers are enjoying what you call, like, they're exporting the stuff, the condition is better. And Mr. McIntyre, I really thought that was the program was basically the Minister of Agriculture was done, because it seemed like everybody had called our concern about agriculture. So I think this is GBN should bring in the Minister of Agriculture on, because basically we need to speak to him.
Okay.
Thank you, caller. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Mr. McIntyre, we due for a break, our final break for the morning. Let's take it. We're coming right back. Stay with us, folks. It's To The Point.
Camp.
For a limited time, the NLA has dropped all of the 2X balls from the multi-X draw. This means that you, our valuable players, have greater chances of multiplying your winnings up to 5 times more in our 2X drop promotion. Yay! And that's not all. As an additional bonus, there will be fewer free play or FP balls to draw from too. Now you have more reasons to add multi-X to your playway bets. So value your dreams, win your way, and multiply your winnings up to 5 times more in the NLA's 2X Dropped promotion. Promo runs until Friday, 20th October, 2023. Must be 18 years or older to play. NLA, making your dreams come true.
Being aware of your body, empowering yourselves as women, and ensuring that we do what is best for us. If we don't look after ourselves, we cannot take care of our families and our husbands and our workforce.
It's important to seek what's called a medical wellness checkup. And your family practitioner, your local health center, or even a specialist can guide you through what may be right for you.
Caribbean Medical, right here on this station.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back, viewers, to The Point for today, Monday, the 25th day of September. Once again, welcome back, Mr. McIntyre, with us this morning. Our conversation this morning, Mr. McIntyre, food security. And, it has gone a couple of different directions than we really anticipated.
Yes.
But it's all good feedback we're getting from the listeners and viewers this morning, because a lot of folks seem to having a problem with, food security in Grenada, to our point.
Yes.
And us being able to sustain ourselves just in case a disaster happens. That's really the conversation we were having this morning. That's the angle we wanted. That's the angle we were really taking this morning, in terms of how sustainable would be our food security just in case there's an emergency occurred. How are we able to feed ourselves?
Yeah.
You understand? Let's take a caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome.
Hello, good morning. Hello?
Go right ahead with your contribution, caller,
Right.
please.
Good morning to Mr. McIntyre. Mr. McIntyre, he was a gentleman that I have a lot of appreciation for you. You do very well. We're talking food security. I think one of the biggest problems with this food security is that we are talking food security where you don't know, we are making no effort to secure food. First of all, we have to know where to store the food. First of all, we have to know where the food coming from. Who are the people that planting the food? The gentleman was talking about we don't have farmers and big farmers and whatnot. Once you have half an acre land, you are considered in Grenada as a farmer. And we shouldn't really argue that, because we know that. You have big farmers, large farmers, and so like the Niagara branches and so on that had big plantation, 100 acres, 200 acres, and so. Every time we keep having survey, what we should be doing is classify these farmers and find out how much they could give, what they could give, and how much they could give. And you have them in that area, and you use the other farmers, you have them in that area. So let's say a man that have from 1 acre to 100 acres or 200 acres is classified one way. A man that have 50 acres and under is classified the next way. And then you find out what these people can produce. A lot of times people produce a thing and they can't sell it. Marketing board is not there, and when marketing board is there, a lot of people produce. They tell you produce. For instance, the minister now, the permanent secretary tell you that they have $10 million for farmers, and you want a cent come back. But today we hear anything roll out, so the farmers don't know where they're going. We ain't nothing roll out for the farmers. We must know the projective, where you going, what quantity you want. So the farmer have to marry with the businessman, and the businessman to marry with the farmer.
All right, caller. Right? Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your contribution this morning. Thank you. Food security, Mr. Yes. McIntyre. Food security. That's our main topic line this morning, and it seems to be getting a little bit diverted more.
And the angle on food security that we spoke about, one of our callers intimated food sovereignty is more user friendly, should be, to what we're really speaking about. But in the context of our conversation this morning, it could be summarized in a few ways, in terms of an analysis of what we produce versus what we import.
Yes.
And what we import or produce, what we consume, is the other factor. Do we eat more of what we import, or do we eat more of what we produce? Is there any statistics that could show us that? So maybe we are eating more things that we import than things that we produce.
Yeah.
And so maybe there might not be a need for us to produce so much of what we produce. Mm-hmm. That is something that...
Or even though what we produce has been consumed by a small minority, yes. So that it doesn't really have that serious impact, because just a couple of folks who produce this stuff are using it.
Yes.
You know?
So our analysis should be able to show that in statistics as to what kinds of food we consume and how vulnerable these foods are, and how, if we are importing, how we can guarantee the access to that reliable source if we do have a crisis. So the middle ground would be production, import, export, consumption, and as to how we can guarantee there's a crisis that people will have access to it. So it boils down to the instrument that would guide that process. It would also lead to the physical infrastructure for people to access this process, the knowledge and the information as to where and how that can be done, and the management evaluating assessment factors that would follow. Mm-hmm. So in essence, food security, food sovereignty, it's a wider issue, and it impacts on nation development, nation building, the sustainability of life, growth and existence, and it is something that the conversation could continue on, but it is something that we need to be mindful of. We are a bit too reactive. We should be a bit more proactive and plan these processes. So we'd wish that entities would come out to say to us, this is where we are, and in the event of a crisis or otherwise, this is our ability to be able to be sustained over that given period, because we have X amount of products by X amount of farmers that we can secure for X amount of days, and these are the access points if people need them, and this is the process through which people can get them. That is the angle. Right. I wish that.
And is there authority, folks in authority who are looking at it at that particular angle? That's another issue.
Is it our business to find that out, or do we expect them to tell us?
Well, they probably should be the one telling us.
That's why we have a conversation.
This we are. This is the position we at, right. And suppose there's something happening in the next year or a couple of months. This is the position, and we are able to. We have that food sustainability just in case.
Right. And so our conversations is not called jokingly answers, but it's called raising the issues, right. The reality and the facts.
Mr. McIntyre, thank you once again for being here this morning. It's a pleasure as always. I want to thank all who contributed towards today's program, whether you called in, you sent a message, or you just listened. Thank you so much. Mr. McIntyre, until next week.
God bless.
All right. Thanks once again to all this morning for being part of To The Point. Join us again for another edition tomorrow, Tuesday. Goodbye.